Welcome to Cabinet Outs, and Premier Houston will start us off today. So, good morning, Premier.
Sorry, I'll let you sit down for Do you have concerns that a series of decisions by your government, the way Bill 127 was presented, the way the reversal on the uranium and fracking positions were presented, the way this cannabis situation is presented, do you have concerns that these are contributing to a deterioration of a relationship between your own government and First Nation leadership in this province?
It shouldn't. I mean, these are all important issues, and we work. I've met with the chiefs a couple times on various things. We've had many discussions. There's an ongoing dialogue between government and the Assembly and individual chiefs and community members on lots of issues. So they're difficult issues. I mean, the most recent one, the cannabis is a difficult issue. I mean, the reality is we have people making millions and millions of dollars selling illegal cannabis. And they're upset to hear that there might be a crackdown on it. We also have people who are customers. And some of them think this is some elaborate scheme by the government to get more money from them. It's not. I mean, we're concerned about the public safety. I've talked to people in law enforcement have told me in this province that they've taken illegal cannabis from unregulated illegal dispensaries and tested it and found that it was laced with traces of fentanyl. So sometimes I hear, I don't buy from the government supply because I don't get the same buzz. Well, that's probably why. And there's all kinds of reports that have tested cannabis sold through the unregulated market in these dispensaries, and they find all kinds of pesticides and things like that. So there's a real public health issue there, and behind it all, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, is organized crime. And so I'm actually hearing, I've been pretty overwhelmed the last few days, to be honest, from the outpouring of support I've heard from people in this province that live in First Nations communities and are thankful that somebody is stepping up because they don't want this in their communities. I've heard from parents and mothers in particular who say, my child says, can we go in the store with the bright flashing lights and get some candy? They don't want that. I actually heard from a young man who said, we don't want this in our community. There's the crime element that it brings. And he was quite surprised. He said, well, I want my leadership working with the government. How can you work with the government when you tell them you're not allowed in the community? So, and I've actually heard from a lot of people in that community in particular.
Why I ask the question is, I take your point about the safety concerns with cannabis, but the recurring theme that seems to come from the chiefs when each of these issues has come up is the feeling that you make decisions, your government makes a decision, and then you loop them in. And the concerns you voiced notwithstanding, when Minister Armstrong had his announcement last week and he released the letter that went to the chiefs, he was releasing it on the same day that it went to the chiefs. And it would seem to me that if you're looking to have a collaborative situation, wouldn't it make sense to have that conversation with the chiefs, ensure they have that letter first, and then go public with what it is you're trying to do?
I think there will, until the end of time, people will be complaining that the government didn't consult enough, didn't consult properly, didn't consult broadly enough.
At all.
This will be on every single issue, from everything. You could just pick any issue that you've covered over the time you've been, and I'll go back and I'll find a story. Somebody will say, somebody will report it, the government didn't consult enough.
That's talking about a group that has a legal obligation to be consulted by government. There's a legal threshold.
I will assure you 100% that we meet and exceed those obligations every single time. Of course we do. So I understand that people are upset, and some of these are emotional topics. But on this topic, the topic of the day, let's say, we have massive concerns, as do many community members across this province and many Nova Scotians, about the organized crime element. Where does everybody think the money's going? You know, so on one day, I'll read a story in the mainstream media about how terrible it is, the human trafficking situation, and it is awful. It is awful what's happening with human trafficking in the province and in across the country. Or I'll read a story about domestic abuse and say, "Oh, you aren't doing enough. Government's not doing enough." And then the next day, I'll read a story often from the same reporter that says, "Oh, don't deal with that organized crime. You should leave them alone." And I'm just telling you that Nova Scotians are tired of it, and they want somebody to stand up against this, and we are the voice for those people who are afraid to stand up. We have great respect for all Nova Scotians, certainly great respect for First Nations communities, and I have relationships with many of the chiefs that are, you know, we talk to them quite a bit.
You don't feel like you're talking to them enough, sir.
Well, here's what I would say to that, because you're hearing from one or two, right?
From Andrea Paul is on record that your government does not speak enough with the chiefs.
Sure.
Terry Paul is on record that your government does not speak enough with the chiefs. Michelle Glasgow is on record. Sid Peters is on record. I can go through all 13 of them for you if you'd like, sir.
Carry on, because I don't think, like I talk to them myself, right? It's a group of people. They don't all agree.
Something different than, why are they saying something different publicly than what they're saying to you?
I'm just saying to you, it's a group of, the chiefs, there's 13 chiefs. They don't always agree on everything. 14, I guess, I guess there's a regional one, maybe, but they don't always agree on everything. So what you asked me if the government is doing enough to consult, and I would say we consult frequently we certainly meet our obligations and exceed them. And if you say, can we do more? Probably in some situations, but sometimes government just has to act too. And in this case right now, we're talking about the sale of illegal cannabis that's having a massive impact on communities. And we're just saying, hey, let's treat weed like we treat booze. You know, why would we do that, right? So I don't want to have a discussion about it, any discussion about the number of excuses for why this should be allowed to continue, or who.
Excuses
no, I
that
don't
it
want to have
should.
that discussion. And some people may raise their voice and say,
Sir, respectfully, no one's suggesting that.
I'm just speaking in general terms. So, and some people might say, it's okay. I don't think it's okay, right? And so we don't think it's okay. So we're hoping there's action.
Why did you decide at this point in your mandate was the moment to take a look at unregulated cannabis when you have been in government since 2021?
The incredible proliferation of these dispensaries. Take a drive down the highway. You might see what I mean.
Premier, are you saying that you're the voice? You are the voice for people in Mi'kmaq communities and not the chiefs and councils?
No, I think as Premier and as government, we have an obligation to Nova Scotians to protect public safety, and that's what we're doing in this case. I mean, the unregulated market. There's all kinds of dangers with the organized crime that's behind that. The health dangers. There's all kinds of issues in there. So I think somebody has to step up, and I think it should be the government.
Have you been in touch with Chief Glasgow since her statement banning you from her land?
I'm sorry.
Have you been in touch with Chief Glasgow? Do you intend to reach out and discuss?
I'm an open door.
Glasgow said that what's been happening, including the directive for the cannabis, Bill 127, and even the treaty fishery, the provincial actions are making the Mi'kmaq, insinuating the Mi'kmaq are lawless criminals and inciting hate against them from Nova Scotians and making decisions on their behalf with no consultation. And like the CBC reporter, I have heard from the majority of the chiefs since September when Bill 27, since talks have failed and there has been no talks with the government. So, and they also said the relationship has never been as bad as it is.
Okay.
What's your response to that? Are you going to talk to them? Or are you going to?
I don't agree with that. I have. Look,
The statement came out, and the chiefs didn't know about it. And the chiefs were all in Ottawa at the AFN meeting. Bill 127 came out, and that week during Treaty Day, Truth and Reconciliation Day, and that came out, and everybody was in ceremony and in community. So they certainly do feel there's a lack of consultation, and now, recently with this cannabis directive, they feel like they're being criminalized and actually targeted.
No, the cannabis, illegal cannabis is illegal cannabis no matter where it's at. Like, that's just the law, and the law applies equally to every Nova Scotian. So look, we're looking for partners, and I'm willing to partner with anyone who wants to focus on
Partner
public safety.
consider respecting Mi'kmaq treaty rights and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which has been held up court recently by a nation in British Columbia.
Of course, to the treaty rights. Nova Scotia is not a signatory to the UN Declaration, but of course to the treaty rights. And I actually think that the treaty right situation, we're all treaty people. The courts have been very clear on the treaty rights in Nova Scotia, including the most recent decision, just within the last year, on treaty rights. So of course we have great respect for treaty rights and Aboriginal rights in general, and we always respect those.
Premier, there's another community, Millbrook First Nation. There's a councillor there that's drafted a motion to put in a similar ban on yourself and other politicians from entering their community. What's your reaction to that? And are you worried this will, escalate into a broader, just raising tensions even further? And how do you temper that? I guess how do you repair this relationship?
We're talking about illegal activity. We're talking about illegal drug dealing. We're talking about public safety. We're talking about organized crime that's behind many of these things. So there's a couple potential reactions, I guess, right? One reaction might be, oh, please come here. Let us show you some of the operations and show you the safety precautions we take. Perhaps another reaction might be, we don't want you to come here and see what's going on. I think it's bizarre. My focus just remains on the public safety of Nova Scotians.
Given that the Nova Scotia RCMP has said that this police directive will have no impact on their cannabis enforcement, it does not change their ongoing efforts on this file, what was the actual purpose of that police directive component?
Every year the province sits down with the RCMP and says, here's policing priorities. This year, this is one of them.
So I'm made to understand that they are already focused on enforcement and that there will be no ramping up as a result. Is that disappointing to you?
That might be your understanding. I have a different understanding. I think this is a problem that's growing and growing, and it needs to be a focus, and I'm sure it will be.
What is your understanding if mine's different? What does that mean in terms of concrete enforcement efforts?
Well, that would be for the police to decide, right? But obviously, the public are concerned about this. I'm personally concerned about it. The government's concerned about it. But the police will decide their actions. That's what police do. But we've just highlighted it to them that this is definitely a concern for us. There are other concerns.
We do have to go to
This year, are you satisfied with that, with those actions of the police, or are you?
Yeah, for sure. Anytime, like in some of those, and let's like some of those busts, let's remember what was discovered there. Oftentimes, guns. Many times, other types of drugs, cocaine in some instances. I think the ICMP highlighted that they're concerned about the other drugs that may be through some of these channels. So that's good, but obviously it's still growing. I mean, as I said, you can drive around the province and you can freely see this, right? So there's more work to be done.
But what do you want specifically?
I don't want any illegal drugs sold in Nova Scotia.
What do you want the police?
Certainly don't want a flashing light saying, come buy your illegal drugs here.
What I'm trying to understand is what are you asking the police to do, since they've already been doing the thing that Scott Armstrong told them to do? We identified our priorities for them. This is a priority, so we want them to I guess, do more, I guess.
Taryn, did you have a question with the Energy Board?
Yes, thank you. The Energy Board has agreed to look into your concerns about inaccurate billing, but they have not said whether they'll wrap it into their existing investigation or do a separate investigation. Do you have an opinion about how that should be handled?
No, I'm glad that they're looking into it. That was the purpose of the letter.
What do you hope comes out of it?
I hope that Nova Scotians can have some confidence in the billing system of Nova Scotia Power.
Just on the duty to consult, I'm wondering sort of what that means to you, what the limitations are, and specifically I'm wondering if you subscribe to that Concord People's argument that was advanced briefly under the previous government.
I'm not familiar with that argument, but
You brought it up at a question period in 2020 about 15 times. It's that
Okay.
argument with Alex Cameron, if you remember him. It was
I
that
do
sovereignty
not.
argument, and I'm wondering if you subscribe to that.
I'm not sure what context it would be used or necessary, but what I would say on the consultation is there's a very well-defined process for consultation in this process. That MOU's been in place for over 10 years, and I think it works. There are times when it applies, and there are occasions along the journey where it applies. So for me, broad government policy is broad government policy. But as an example, a specific, let's say mine or something, a specific operation would trigger different consultation requirements than broad government policy. So I do firmly believe that when there's an actual operation, that's that's like, what are the impacts? What are what are the mitigating factors and the discussion? But a broad policy, that's a different thing. Lifting a ban on uranium province-wide, that's a different thing. Having a uranium mine in a specific area, absolutely. That is. So I think you just need to be mindful of where it's triggered, and we follow the terms of the MOU. And if there's a wish for a different MOU or different triggering things, then that's a different discussion. But we have that discussion. But I won't accept that we don't follow the process as it has been agreed and operational. We do follow it. There might be others that wish it was different. That's different, right? But we follow the process, and we'll continue to follow the process with great respect.
Thanks.
Story has such enemy, Premier.
Appreciate you guys.
Do you have concerns that your MLAs would receive training telling them every story has an enemy?